Hey guys, Ryan here, and today we are going to be looking at the Kramnik vs. Svidler game in the 2014 Candidates Tournament Round 10. Sorry for that last video. Anand vs. Topalov was actually Round 9. I kind of messed up there, but I know you guys like the commentary that I did on the Anand Topalov game, so I'm bringing to you Svidler vs. Kramnik. I like to put the commentary on the games when it was actually played, but I might not do commentary in the games which they're all draws, because I don't want to bore you to death. But anyways, let's get to it. It was a pretty astonishing game. With the late blunder by Kramnik. But basically all the other games were draws. Aronian versus Topalov and that fun stuff. So basically I am bringing to you Kramnik versus Svidler and Game 10 candidates. Let's start off. So Svidler starts off with d4. Okay, common Grandmaster opening. Those kind of stuff. And now Kramnik plays f5, going for kind of like the Dutch kind of themed opening. Knight to f3. Okay, so planning basically maybe g3 and g3 and bishop f4 or c4, bishop f4, those type. And bishop g5, but so knight f6, continuing, e3, okay, b6, and now Svidler plays d5. So the point of b6 was to fianchetto his bishop, and d5 has basically a couple of values to it. So first of all, d5 is trying to block the e7 to e6 push. It will make the e pawn backwards if it does try to go to e6, because usually in the Dutch you want your pawn to be on e6. So it does stop the pawn from going to e6. It deprives the knight of the c6 square. Sometimes the knight would want to go here, but d5 stops that. And one of the main reasons is because of this bishop. It basically blocks the path of the bishop. So Kramnik plays bishop b7 to try to attack that pawn, and Svidler plays bishop to c4, defending it. And now Kramnik can't even play e6. Well, he can, but he's going to lose a pawn and have a bad position anyway. So now Kramnik plays c6, reasonable, basically trying to do everything I talked about. So opening up the b7 bishop's diagonal, letting the knight go to c6 once it's either capture on d5 or capture on c6. And also once this pawn is away, then black can go e6. So white plays knight c3, not letting it go. The song from Frozen. But anyway, so knight c3 to guard the pawn. And now c takes d5. Knight takes d5. Okay, normal. And now e6. So basically, black got in his e6 that he wanted to play. And his bishop's path's going to be open, and knight c6 is available to him. And white now needs to move that knight, so knight takes f6 check. Queen takes f6, the best capture, castles, and bishop c5. So we've got in a pretty standard transition from the opening to kind of the middle game. Black has the bishop on b7 striking down in the Svidler has the bishop on b7 striking down on the AAH1 diagonal. And basically both of his bishops are activated. He's planning to push his pawn in the center like d5 and e5 and those stuff. Maybe even g5 later on if he can. And basically, so Kramnik decides to try to develop his bishop and plays bishop d2. And now Svidler plays knight c6. Well, why didn't Svidler just play queen takes b2, right? Free pawn, right? Well, actually that's kind of not the case, because after a very strong white move of knight to d4, this is the main point, Black is kind of in trouble here. Well, first of all, you can see that he can't just like ignore it because of the threats of rook b1 and knight b5, and he just can't ignore that because it's completely devastating if he lets that. And probably he's going to play bishop takes d4, but then rook b1, and once you play queen b3, then bishop b4, nice in between move, queen a4, and queen takes d4. The king is stuck in the center, the g7 pawn is hanging. It's just a bad position for Black. So look at that again. If he takes, if he takes, then knight d4, and he's sending rook b1. So if bishop takes d4, rook b1, queen a3, bishop b5, and white has a lot of compensation for the pawn. So pause the screen if you want, but that's basically why he didn't play queen takes b2 and instead played knight c6. So he allowed Kramnik to play bishop c3. Now queen e7, good move. Not letting, well, it's just so that the black queen can't be kicked anymore, like knight h4 and those types of stuff. a3 planning b4 b5 push, a5 stopping it. Queen e2, good move, developing the queen, connecting the rooks, and having a strong hold on, grip on the a6 to f1 diagonal. Castles, rook a d1, developing move, and d5. So now, although this move is a bit committal because it does weaken these dark squares on e5 and d4 and f4 and those stuff, it also but it also has an impact on the center, and now black is controlling the center now. Bishop b5. So now it's basically fatal for black to let white to play bishop takes c6, because let's have like maybe a sample line like rook f d8, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, knight e5. And I think you get the point that this position is just not good for black. Like, he can plan to play b4 and b5 in the future. Bishop d4 maybe here, and it's just a good knight versus a bad bishop. So you wouldn't want to do that. So that's why he played knight to a7. a4, so he still doesn't want to give up that knight because of what I just said, the outpost on e5, those stuff. Bishop d6, now to guard it. So now he's threatening to take on b5. Knight takes b5, a takes b5, because queen takes b5, bishop a6. Knight takes b5, a takes b5, and e5 is very strong for black. So that's why white played bishop to a6. The bishop's not really doing anything on b5, and the bishop on b7 is protecting the d5 pawn for the e5 push and can get really strong later on. So that's a good move. You might think it's a bad bishop, but it's actually a good one, and it does protect the center when you play e5. So knight c6, bringing the knight back to the center now that white cannot take the knight. And now bishop takes b7 and queen takes b7. So in the middle game, we have a fairly equal position. Black might be planning pushes in the center, but white has outposts there, and he has a strong grip on the b5 square, although that doesn't really matter, but it might come in handy later in the game, maybe not. b3, just to strengthen the position. Queen a6. And now white had a choice to make whether to trade or not. Kramnik played queen d2, but if he did decide to trade, this would be slightly better for white, not that much, because after like bishop b2, planning to break in the center with maybe like if you put the rook back, maybe c4, those ideas, and then hop your knight into like knight b4 or bishop c3 or something along the lines of that, maybe knight e5. So it's fairly even. Like if you play rook d8 now, it would be better because now c4 is kind of rendered useless. But it is still a fairly good position for white, and it is slightly better. I think now white has knight g5 and then c4. Yeah, so it is slightly better for white, but it doesn't really matter. Like this might be a line, and bishop c3 just. So that is a line that could have been played in the game, but Kramnik decided to play queen d2 and not trade queens, which was a fair decision, but queen takes a6 would have been slightly stronger. Really just depends on kind of your instincts and the sense of position. Rook a c8, nice developing move, putting the rook on the semi-open file. Knight g5, protecting the pawn, e-pawn. And now rook ce8. So, if you're wondering why rook fe8 wasn't played, well, it is perfectly fine, but I think that black was scared of maybe e4 ideas. It is fine though after fe4, knight takes e4, and bishop f8. But I can see why black would be kind of scared of it, Svidler would. Because if you play the move in the game, then if you play e4, then you can take f takes, knight takes, and bishop f4, and you can take the knight. So it wouldn't work. So that's why I played that. Now bishop b2, planning to play c4 and those kinds of lines. Maybe queen c3. h6, nice move. Knight f3, okay, going back. Bishop b4, it's actually a pretty clever move because right now, since white wants to play c4, what since since white wants to play c4, black provokes c3 to block in the bishop, and then plays bishop e7. So that's c4, d takes c4, and the bishop is not on pre anymore. So it is actually a pretty clever move. I like it. And now the bishop is kind of blocked in. c4 anyways. So d takes c4 and rook c1. If you were wondering, actually, well, a slightly better move might have been queen e2, but that's just a variation. Rook c1 is a-okay. Now b5. So another move was rook c8, and it would have been the same except with the possible line of queen d7 attacking e6, but actually black is okay after king f7, and it's crazy, but it is, and he's actually threatening to trap the queen with rook fd8. It was just a fun line that I saw. Yeah, so back to the game. B takes c4, rook c1, b5. Yeah, rook c8 would have been an improvement, but it doesn't really matter too much. So b5, a takes b5, queen takes b5, rook takes c4. Good move, not letting the passed a pawn. Doesn't really matter, but it's just a good move. Knight to b4, taking advantage of the outpost. Knight e5, good outpost. Knight d5, they're just maneuvering their knights, and so they have a better grip on the position. Queen c2, okay. So basically what he wants to do is to take control of the c file and maybe move a rook over to d1, and maybe in the future try to break with e4. So bishop d6, trying to get rid of that knight. Knight c6 here, good move, planning knight d4. And knight b6, attacking the rook. And now, yeah, Kramnik makes a big blunder and plays rook d4. The best move, actually, and the only move kind of was, well, not the only move, but the best move was to play knight d4. And in that line, things might have gone like queen e5, attacking h2, knight f6, knight f3, queen b5, and now maybe rook d4, rook c6. But yeah, the only problem with rook d4 now is pause the video if you don't know what it is and try to see it. Otherwise, if you already have it, yeah, it was a pretty big blunder. And bishop takes h2 check, basically wins the game. It was a bad blunder by Kramnik. Not sure what he was thinking, but it was pretty bad. King takes h2 and queen takes f1. Maybe he missed it or something, but I doubt he missed it. Maybe he just didn't see something in it, because at that level you just don't blunder like that. It was kind of interesting. Queen c3, so trying to recover at least. Queen c3, trying to do something on g7, like maybe rook g4, but nothing's gonna happen. Rook f6 blocks it, and knight to e5. I don't know what he's trying to do. Probably knight d7 and try to play knight takes, and rook takes g7, but no, it doesn't really work. Queen takes f2, rook f4, just attacking the queen. Not much in it now. Queen e2, threatening knight d5, queen d4, so attacking the knight, knight d5, rook f3, trying to kind of block in the queen and stop from getting to h5, and maybe going to g3. Maybe going to g3 or maybe not, but rook c8, just getting the rook to c2 would be lethal. So rook g3 to protect c2. Maybe play knight d7. f4. And yeah, the game is over. This position is just completely lost. Like, there is nothing in it. Probably after here. Oof, yeah. Rook takes f4. And that is kind of like a queen trap. But, like, queen g1 or queen a7 is just disgusting to play. Like, it's horrible. Rook h4 check, rook h3.
Check.
And check.
Check.
And yeah, the game is over. So basically that's why he resigned in this hopeless position. It's a very interesting blunder here. Don't think he didn't see it. I just think he missed a part of it there. But rook d4, and just knight d4 would have been fine and would have probably equalized position. But things just happen, and Kramnik didn't have a good day today. And yeah, so this was the game, and yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this candidates round 10 match between Kramnik and Svidler. Surprising, but nonetheless fun. Put in the comments if you want me to do more commentary, if I can modify them or anything. And yeah, so that should wrap it up for this analysis video in candidates round 10. And yeah, so bye guys, see ya.